6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello and welcome to 6 Minute English. I'm Rob.
And hello, I'm Neil.
Hi there, Neil. Now, have you ever had a close encounter with a monkey or an ape?
Well, I am sitting next to you, Rob.
Very funny. No, Neil is referring to the fact that all humans are descended from apes and monkeys belong to a group of animals called primates. The difference is that monkeys have tails and apes don't.
Well, I didn't know that. On a serious note, I had a close shave with some monkeys once in Bali.
A close shave is where you only just manage to avoid a dangerous situation. So, Neil, what happened?
I was walking up a mountain on my own, and suddenly a bunch of monkeys jumped out of nowhere, blocking my path.
Oh, goodness. OK, so what did you do?
After standing there for ages while the monkeys screeched at me, I turned round and walked back the way I came.
OK, if you screech at someone, it means to make a loud, high and unpleasant sound. So the monkeys won that face-off then?
Absolutely, yes, they did. And a face-off, by the way, means an argument or fight.
Well, today's show is about gibbons and the different sounds they make. Gibbons are small apes that live in Southeast Asia. And while Neil's monkeys screech unpleasantly, gibbons sound like they're singing.
Musical apes, that's nice. So how about today's quiz question, Rob?
OK, good idea. How far can a gibbon's voice travel through the forest? Is it A, 500 metres, B, 1 kilometre, or C, 5 kilometres?
Well, I have to guess, and I'm going to say B, 1 kilometre.
You've never heard one?
Never heard one.
OK, well, we'll find out later in the programme whether you're right or wrong. Now let's listen to what a gibbon really sounds like.
Let's just hear this. That's an absolutely wonderful, evocative sound, isn't it? Beautiful sound. And what are they doing there then? That is, I said talking to each other.
Well, this is they're singing together. So a male and a female, when they hold a territory together, will sing every morning, what they call a duet. All the groups are surrounded.
What we call a duet.
Yes.
It's quite.
Absolutely. And they'll all sing together at the same time, and the whole forest will be alive with this cacophony of song.
So the gibbons make an evocative sound. If something is evocative, it brings strong feelings or memories to mind.
And something that is evocative is usually pleasant, Rob.
It is. And what's also interesting is that the apes are singing in pairs, one male and one female. They are singing duets together. So a duet is a song sung by two people, or in this case, sung by two gibbons.
And a lot of gibbons are singing duets at the same time, which Dr. Clark describes as a cacophony. Cacophony means a mix of loud noises which often sound out of tune.
And that could easily describe us singing together.
Let's not do that.
But what's the reason for the gibbon duets, Neil?
Well, the songs advertise the relationship between the male and the female, and they also help to make clear which territory or bit of land belongs to a pair or group of gibbons.
Gibbons also use different sounds to alert or warn other gibbons about danger from predators. These are animals that eat other animals. The gibbons use a quiet hoo-hoo call to communicate that a leopard is nearby, and an even quieter hoo-hoo call for an eagle.
You're very good at that,
Thank
Rob.
you.
Now let's hear more from Dr. Clark about this. How does he describe language?
Yes, so the idea is that if we find things like context-specific calling in non-human primates, it suggests that way back in time, the ancestor that we shared with them also had context-specific calling. So basically it just gives us some clues to the evolutionary roots of complex communication like language.
Dr. Clark says that if we go far enough back in time, humans and other primates, such as monkeys and apes, have the same ancestor.
Right, and ancestor means an animal or human from the past that a modern animal or human has descended from. So, if this common ancestor used context-specific calls, like modern gibbons, then it could have passed on this ability to humans a long time ago.
Context-specific calling means different calls for different situations. For example, one call for leopard and another for eagle.
And evolutionary means a gradual process of change or development.
OK, well, let's have the answer to the quiz question. Earlier, I asked, how far can a gibbon's voice travel through the forest? Is it A, 500 metres, B, 1 kilometre, or C, 5 kilometres?
And I said B, 1 kilometre.
And you were right. A good guess.
Ah,
or
very
perhaps
good.
you do know a lot about gibbons. So well done. Now, can we hear today's words again? Maybe in a gibbon's voice, Neil?
Not sure about that. I'll do it in a human voice.
OK.
Primates. A close shave. Screech. Face off. Gibbons. Evocative. Duet. Cacophony. Territory. Alert. Predators. Ancestor. Evolutionary.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of today's 6 Minute English. You can hear more 6 Minute English programmes on our website at bbclearningenglish.com. Please join us again soon.
Goodbye.
Bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Beth.
Maybe the only good thing about COVID lockdowns was the return of wildlife to our towns and cities. Birds, foxes and deer were seen in the streets close to people's homes.
Of course, rubbing shoulders with animals, spending time with them is amazing. But imagine a hungry African elephant stumbling into your garden and eating your prize vegetables. How would you stop it? It sounds unlikely, but that's exactly the problem faced by farmers in Africa.
Yes, as human populations increase, while natural habitats decline, people and animals are increasingly being forced to compete for space. Wild animals can endanger humans when they break into their farms for food or water. And people might be forced to attack or even kill these animals to defend their homes.
This situation, known as human-wildlife conflict, is becoming more frequent. But in this programme, we'll be hearing about ingenious farmers in Kenya who are keeping their food safe from hungry wild animals. And as usual, we'll be learning some useful new vocabulary.
But first, I have a question for you, Beth. Weighing around 6 tons, a fully grown African elephant needs to eat a lot every day. But how much exactly? Is it A, 50 kilograms of food per day, B, 100 kilograms of food per day, or C, 150 kilograms of food per day?
I'll guess an elephant eats 150 kilos of food a day.
OK, Beth, we'll find out if that's the right answer at the end of the programme. Victor Ndombi is Food Security Officer for the wildlife charity Save the Elephants. Victor works at Tsavo National Park in Kenya, where he's often faced with wild elephants breaking into farms for food and water. Here's Victor explaining more to Michael Kaloki, reporter for BBC World Service programme People Fixing the World.
The conflict usually varies. What we experience here is during the crop season, that is the rainy season. That's where we usually have the crop raids. The elephants usually come here, lots of them, and the crop raid on the crops.
Can I ask you, Victor, where do these elephants come from?
So they come from those private ranches, national parks, and they come to this community. They are looking for where there is green pastures. So they come to this community where we have these nutritious foods. You know, elephants love maize, beans, and that is the crop that farmers here usually farm. So they come and eat those crops here, and also looking for water.
Victor sounds very calm about this. It's just a way of life for the people out here. But elephants do spell big trouble for farmers. A fully grown male elephant can weigh the same as 6 cars on top of each other. It's easy to see how they can destroy crops and livelihoods.
Victor works in a national park, a large area of land which is protected by the government because of its natural beauty, plants or animals. He explains that the elephants raid crops like maize and beans from farmers in the park. To raid means to suddenly attack a place and steal from it.
These crop raids have become more frequent because elephants are desperate to find water and because the park lacks money to fix broken fences which keep wild animals out. Victor says the raids have become a way of life, an activity that has become a regular thing in people's lives, rather than something that happens only occasionally.
That's no problem if it's a fox in your rubbish bin, but African elephants are as big as 6 cars on top of each other, and this spells trouble for the farmers. If something spells trouble, it suggests that there may be problems in the future.
Fortunately, there's an unusual solution that's got people buzzing. Bees. Ancient Kenyan folklore says that elephants are scared of bees. That's right. Elephants, the world's biggest land mammal, are scared of an insect the size of your thumbnail.
Victor's team install beehive fences to protect farmers' crops. Real bees work best, but even a recording of bees angrily buzzing is enough to keep the elephants away. Better yet, the bees also pollinate plants and even produce honey. It's good news for the farmer, but I have to feel a little sorry for the elephants.
Yes, especially because they need to eat so much. I think it's time to reveal the answer to my question, Beth.
You asked me how much food an elephant eats per day, and I guessed it was 150 kilograms.
And that was the correct answer. Well done. A fully grown African elephant needs 150 kilograms of food per day. OK, let's recap the rest of the vocabulary we've learned in this programme about human-wildlife conflict, a phrase describing harmful encounters between humans and wild animals.
If you rub shoulders with someone, you meet them and spend time together.
To raid means to suddenly attack a place and steal something.
A national park is a large area of a country which is protected by the government because of its natural beauty, plants or animals.
If you describe an activity as a way of life, you mean that it's become a common or regular event for someone, rather than something that happens only occasionally.
And finally, when something spells trouble, it suggests that there may be problems coming in the future. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, I'm Rob. Welcome to 6 Minute English. With me today is Neil. Hello, Neil.
Hi there, Rob.
In this programme, we're going to be talking about endangered species, particularly elephants in China. So let's start with a question, Neil. Do you know how many elephants are still living in the wild in China? Is it A, fewer than 15,000, B, fewer than 1,000, or C, fewer than 300?
I don't know, but I'm going to have a guess and say B, fewer than 1,000.
OK, well, we'll let you know if you're right or wrong at the end of the programme.
So, Rob, have you ever come across any animal species that are under threat in your travels?
Yes, I have. I went to Australia a few years ago and I saw some turtles on the beach laying their eggs, and they're very rare, aren't they?
Ah, they are very rare. I've always wanted to see them, but I haven't had the chance. I was lucky enough to see a panda when I was in China once, and they're threatened with extinction too, of course.
Yeah. Well, the sad thing is, Neil, these animals are in danger largely because of the activities of human beings. There's all sorts of reasons why this is happening.
Yes, and it's actually very upsetting. It could easily be prevented if people thought a bit harder about the impact their lives make on wild animals. Take those sea turtles you were talking about, for instance. They're under threat for all sorts of reasons, overfishing being one of them.
Then there are various species of rhinoceros which could disappear in a few years' time. Again, people poach these creatures. Poach means hunt illegally, because their horns are used for medicinal purposes. And of course, in country areas, miles from civilization, it's almost impossible to keep a check on illegal killings.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, Rob?
Well, actually, it's not that simple, Neil. Human beings are also under pressure and often have strong arguments in favour of their actions. This Chinese farmer explains. He uses an expression that means arrived. Can you tell me what it is?
There are too many elephants around here. We used to grow sugarcane, but then the elephants started showing up and ate it all, so we gave up growing it. There was barely anything we could grow. No matter what we planted, there was nothing to harvest. Now we grow rubber. It's the only thing they won't eat.
He said showing up. This means the elephants arrived.
And he said they gave up growing it. This means they stopped growing it.
The plight of the Asian elephant in China makes a pretty bleak picture, I must say. I understand that they are victims of all sorts of abuse.
Yes, experts say their numbers have declined by 50% in the last 75 years. Poaching is one reason why. They're hunted not for their tusks, that happens to the larger African elephant, but for their skins to make leather goods and for their meat.
They are also losing their habitats, that's the places where they live, because of the growth in the number of plantations, particularly rubber, but also other cash crops. These agricultural monocultures, as they're called, spell death for the elephant's lifestyle. Logging, or deforestation, in which whole forests are destroyed, also adds to their problems.
What's more, in some places, their migratory routes have been cut off by human populations living in newly established villages. In a more general sense, just expanding human population is forcing them out of their natural environments.
There's another very unpleasant way in which these creatures are suffering, Rob. Many of the young elephants are taken away from the herd and turned into performing circus animals for tourists.
No, really, Neil?
Yes, I hear that sometimes nails are driven into their feet. They're deprived of sleep, food and water. That's to make them easier to train.
OK, well, that sounds so cruel. But there are people trying to improve the situation, Neil. For example, there's a rehabilitation programme, that's a scheme to bring them back to a normal life, which rescues elephants at risk and gives them protection within a special sanctuary. Then there are some people who are trying to get farmers to work in a different way. Let's listen to a forestry policeman. He uses an expression to describe the way people farm the land. Can you tell me what it is?
It makes me sad. I want people to know that they shouldn't cut down the forest and that there are consequences if they do. I want them to change their farming practices, to change how they make a living. We could become a tourist destination. People could make money from that.
He said farming practices. This means the way people farm the land.
And he said make a living. This refers to people earning enough money in order to survive. So let's hope the elephants still living in the wild in China can be saved. So would you like the answer to the quiz question now, Neil?
Yes, OK. You asked me how many elephants are still living in the wild in China. Was it fewer than 15,000, fewer than 1,000, or fewer than 300? And I guessed 1,000.
Well, I'm afraid the answer is actually fewer than 300.
Oh, no, that's a real cause for concern, isn't it?
It certainly is. Well, we're almost out of time, so let's remind ourselves of some of the words we've said today, Neil.
Poach. Habitats. Showing up. Gave up. Farming practices. Make a living. Rehabilitation programme.
Thanks, Neil. Well, that's it for today. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
6 Minute English. From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Georgie. It's said that your personality is reflected in your pet, an animal that you keep in your home as a companion and treat kindly. Dog people are supposed to be friendly, enthusiastic and loyal, whereas cat people are introverted, proud and sensitive. Are you a dog person or a cat person, Neil?
Oh, I'm definitely a dog person, Georgie. I want a pet that's friendly and loves me, not a lazy cat that sits around all day waiting for food.
Whether you're a dog person, a cat person, or have a goldfish, hamster or parrot for a pet, the British are well known as a nation of animal lovers. In the UK, 52% of owners describe their pet as their best friend. And in 2021, 18 million homes had at least one pet, meaning that for the first time, there were more households with a pet than without.
In this programme, we'll be hearing how our relationship with pets has changed over the centuries. And, as usual, we'll be learning some useful new vocabulary as well. But first, I have a question for you, Georgie. Nowadays, thanks to the internet, modern pets are getting online. So what % of dogs and cats in the UK do you think have their own social media profile? Is it A, 7%, B, 17%, or C, 70%?
It sounds crazy, but I'll guess 17% of British pets have their own social media account.
OK, Georgie, we'll find out the answer later in the programme. Cats using Instagram and dogs on TikTok may be a strange new development, but our relationship with pets has continually changed throughout history. In the 1800s, people started using the word pet to describe the emotional connection they felt to a special animal, and gradually it became normal to keep pets indoors.
Here, Jane Hamlet, Professor of History and author of a new book, The Pet Revolution, explains to BBC Radio 4 programme Thinking Aloud how early British attitudes to pets were based on economics.
First of all, on a very practical level, living standards are gradually increasing across that period, and it becomes more possible to keep pets if you have more disposable income. But I think in British culture, in the 19th century in particular, home and family are increasingly celebrated, and keeping a pet becomes a way of bringing animals into your home life and also really expressing what it means to be part of a family. Animals become part of that.
Family pets became more popular as people's living standards increased. Living standards, which are also known as the standard of living, refer to the level of material comfort people live in. It's connected to their disposable income, the money left over to spend on things you want after paying tax and other living expenses. In other words, as people got richer, they had more money to spend on luxury items, including pets.
And by the Victorian era, this included new and exotic pets such as tigers, lions, monkeys and elephants, which were shipped back from around the British Empire. Even the famous Victorian writer Charles Dickens owned a pet raven.
It was also the Victorians who first described Britain as a nation of dog lovers, a phrase they used to reflect the idea they had of themselves, as Professor Jane Hamlet explained to BBC Radio 4 programme Thinking Aloud.
In the Victorian era, dogs were very much the top pet, and you can see that the values that were often associated with dogs, so loyalty, trustfulness, steadfastness, all of these qualities were also celebrated by the Victorians as key parts of the Victorian manly character. So dogs really fitted the bill.
The Victorians admired the qualities associated with dogs, qualities like self-confidence and loyalty, being strong and unchanging in support of your friends. While dogs were considered strong and manly, cats were feminine and weak. So for the Victorians, dogs really fitted the bill, an idiom meaning they were suitable for a particular purpose.
Britain's relationship with pets really has changed over the years. From the manly British bulldog to funny cat videos on YouTube, it's been quite a journey. Maybe it's time to reveal the answer to my question, Georgie.
Right. You asked me how many dogs and cats in the UK had their own social media profile, and I guessed it was 17%.
Which was the correct answer. What I still don't understand is how they get their paws on the keypad. Anyway, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned in this programme about the love the British have for their pets, animals you keep in your home as a companion and treat kindly.
A cat person is someone who likes or prefers cats, unlike a dog person who prefers dogs.
Living standards, or standard of living, refers to the level of material comfort in which people live.
Your disposable income is the money left over to spend on things you want after paying taxes and your living expenses.
Loyalty means having strong and unchanging support for your friends.
And finally, if something fits the bill, it's suitable to serve a particular purpose. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. Join us again soon for more trending topics and useful vocabulary here at 6 Minute English. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Welcome to 6 Minute English, the programme where we bring you an interesting topic and 6 useful words or phrases. I'm Neil.
And I'm Dan. Today we're talking about one of the last mysteries of science. No, not if the universe will keep expanding forever, but this. How do cats and dogs find their way home over long distances?
We hear incredible stories of lost pets travelling tens and even hundreds of miles home, but scientists struggle to explain how they do it.
We'll hear the view of one scientist today, but before that, I have to ask an important question. Neil, are you a cat person or a dog person?
Oh, that's easy. I'm a cat person for sure. Dogs are just, well, they're hard work, aren't they?
If you say you're a cat person, it means you prefer cats. A coffee person prefers coffee. A something person likes or prefers that thing, often over another thing.
Back to the topic. I'm a cat person. But can you answer this, Dan? Recently, a cat called Omar made headlines for being possibly the world's longest cat. How long is Omar? Is it A, 120 centimetres, B, 80 centimetres, or C, 180 centimetres?
I'm going to say C, 180 centimetres.
Now, from long cats to long-distance cats, scientists were scratching their heads a couple of years ago when a lost cat called Holly travelled 200 miles to get home. How did it do it?
We say scratch your head when you're confused about something. There are a few theories about how cats and dogs navigate, but we don't yet have the full answer.
Well, both cats and dogs have an extremely powerful sense of smell, of course. Smells are like signposts. They let you know where you are. Visual landmarks also play a role, just as they do with humans. A landmark is something very easily recognised, a big building or mountain, for example.
And what about this one? Magnets are pieces of metal which attract certain other kinds of metal, for example, iron or steel. The Earth itself has a magnetic force.
Birds use it to help them navigate over thousands of miles. It tells them where north is. It's thought they have some iron in their beaks.
But some scientists think mammals also have this capability.
So we have a few ideas. Smell, landmarks, magnetic forces. But can we explain how one kitty travelled over 200 miles by itself back to its home?
Let's hear from cat and dog expert Dr. John Bradshaw. How do cats build up the maps in their heads?
What they do when they are in a new territory is explore it in a very systematic way. So they'll go out in ever-increasing circles. They'll literally construct a mental map in their heads. And so a cat that's lost its territory probably does the same thing. They'll rely on the idea that if they go out in ever-increasing circles or rectangles, then eventually they will either come across the territory or they'll come across a smell carried on the wind of the territory that they used to live in and then be able to get home.
Cats have a systematic approach, which means they use a system, which is, first they walk around their area in a small circle, then a bigger one, and then a bigger one, until they have a strong mental map of the place.
Yes, a mental map is a map in your head, stored in your memory, and the area cats explore, their home area, is called their territory. Cats are territorial, which means their territory is very important to them.
Having a map is great, but what happens when a cat gets lost? Dr. Bradshaw says that, again, it moves around in bigger and bigger circles until it finds a clue, which is a landmark or a smell that tells it where it is. Well, that's the theory, though Dr. Bradshaw says we really still don't have enough data, that's enough information, about this.
When there is a scientific breakthrough, we'll bring it to you in 6-minute English, I hope. For now, let's content ourselves with Omar, possibly the world's longest cat. How long then, Dan?
I said 180 centimetres.
Omar measures 120 centimetres. That's over 2/3 of my height and weighs a heavy 14 kilograms.
Well, one thing, Neil. If Omar ever got lost, he'd be found in no time.
He's a landmark in himself, which reminds me, let's run through today's words again. If you're a cat person, you prefer cats. If you're an evening person, you prefer evenings.
I've always thought you were a kind person, Neil.
Nice of you to say. But we only use the phrase with nouns, not adjectives.
Indeed. We don't want listeners to be scratching their heads.
No, we can't confuse them. So let's explain the next one clearly. A landmark is something easily recognisable that lets you know where you are. The bridges in London are landmarks.
And can we say the parks are magnets in summer? A magnet is a piece of metal that attracts iron and steel, but we can also use the word more widely to describe things that attract other things. 2 more words. Territory is a noun, the area of land that an animal considers to be its own.
Animals who feel this strongly are described as territorial. Humans can be too, about land or subjects they feel they own or control.
And finally, systematic, the adjective from system. We can talk about a systematic approach, a systematic solution, a systematic study.
And we have systematically worked our way through all of today's words.
Very good, which means it's time to mention our own online territory, our website and social media pages.
Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. And of course, bbclearningenglish.com.
Bye-bye for now.
Goodbye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.